I request the Honorable Minister of Finance to please remain on stage to deliver the inaugural keynote of the India IDS Summit. I'm pleased to invite Mr. Myron Brilliant to join me to give her a warm introduction.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to have this great honor and privilege in introducing the Honorable Minister Sitharaman. Let me just say at the outset that everyone here today owes a great deal of gratitude to Atul and the entire team of the U.S. India Business Council, because this is our first in-person meeting in India of this sort now since the pandemic. So I just want to thank Atul and the entire U.S. India Business Council team. Minister, you may not know that Secretary Kissinger many years ago brought the idea of the U.S. India Business Council to the U.S. Chamber's Board of Directors. And I don't think at the time that he could envision how big the U.S.-India relationship would grow, how significant this U.S.-India relationship would be. But I can tell you one thing, having seen him in action, I'm not going to make the mistake that one gentleman made when introducing Secretary Kissinger. He said, "This man needs no introduction. Everyone knows who Secretary Kissinger is." Secretary Kissinger got up to the stage and said, "I may not have needed an introduction, but I sure would have liked one." And so I'm not going to make the same mistake, Minister. I would say everyone knows the incredible growth story of India, that if you look at the economic miracle of India, growth at 7%, despite the enormous uncertainty coming out of the COVID pandemic, the conflict in Europe, the questions around security, food security, energy security, inflation. Despite that, this economy has grown and grown, is now the 5th largest economy in the world, and by all accounts will be the 3rd largest economy in the world over the next few years. So while COVID and other issues have created uncertainty, there is something going on in India that makes us all, one, very proud to be here and contributing to the U.S.-India relationship. Our companies, our chairman, Ed Knight, and everyone will speak to the value of this relationship. But we need to renew and accelerate this relationship in unique ways. And so, Madam Minister, I know that you'll talk about the miracle of India, how you have managed to be a stable economic engine at a time of great uncertainty. But I also think that we have to think about India both in the context of how the United States and India work together going forward through IPATH, through the Quad and other means to accelerate inclusive growth, financial inclusion, and of course, the digital age. Madam Minister talked about this previously in a meeting with some members of the board of the India Business Council in expressing her views about the drive towards the digital economy and the importance to India. As we gather here today, halfway around the world in Los Angeles, there are commerce ministers talking about digital trade and digital connectivity and discussing how we can work together more constructively and pragmatically. Honorable Minister, you've helped make India a miracle economy, brought vibrancy to this country, and you're no stranger to the U.S.-India Business Council and to the U.S. investor community. But in this room are companies that employ thousands upon thousands of Indian people. They're contributors to the society here. They're contributors in hard times and in good times, but most importantly, for the long road. The business community knows that you are very approachable, that, Minister, that you get things done, and that you are, by all accounts, a person that acts on her words and her deeds in a way that contributes to the growth of this economy. Prime Minister was clearly very smart, Prime Minister Modi, to select you as the finance minister after you served with distinction as the defense minister and the spokesperson for the party. Everyone in this room knows how highly regarded you are, not just in this country, but around the world, not just because you're a powerful force for change in this country and an important and impressive leader of this economy, but someone who understands that we all are in it together. Minister, I hope that you recognize that the U.S. Chamber and the U.S. India Business Council and our member companies are contributors to your vision, to your goal for strengthening the India economy, for the important role that India plays on the global stage. Honorable Minister Sitharaman, I hope that you see us as friends, not just today, but for the next 75 years and beyond. And with that, please give the Honorable Minister a round of applause and welcome her to the stage.
Good morning, and let me admit it's always been an inspirational exchange of ideas whenever I've interacted with the US IBC. Now, with the title given, India IIS Summit, and also looking at maximizing the next 75 years of India-US prosperity. So it doesn't give you any chance to think of anything else. The title is so well worded. It makes it possible for all of us to sit up and say what exactly can be the contributions each one of us can make. So thank you very much, US IBC, US Chamber of Commerce, for coming together at a time when the world is going through turbulent changes. And these are not such changes that it affects only some countries and the others are safe. No country is safe, or no country is so immune that they're not going to be affected by these changes which are happening much beyond, I suppose, all our control. So it is a time when all of us will have to really work hard to see what are the best ways in which we can synergize our linkages and come out, because the kind of potential that exists in maximizing the prosperity by collaborating between the two countries, we stand to benefit not just as two countries, but the contribution that together that we can make will have an impact on the globe, which in some parts are still struggling to have basic securities, whether be of food or be of energy. So thank you very much again for having this gathering at a time when all of us will have to definitely do the critical thinking so that we can help not just ourselves, but the people around us. I think the current status of the US-India relationship is something worth recalling for just a minute, even if it's a repetition of very many things that have been said earlier. In the last 8 years for sure, where I've been party to the decisions and also to the various engagements, I've seen that there's been a very interactive relationship between the US and India. And that interaction, again, has been very pointed. It's just not sharing some thoughts and some homilies here and there, but very pointed and understanding each other's compulsions, challenges, as much as understanding the potential that exists. And being responsive, therefore, we have also helped in getting over several such hurdles which have otherwise held back investments coming into India. And on that, I will emphasize that Prime Minister himself engages with businesses directly, gets his ideas, and also makes sure the engagement with ministers, engagement with India's business interests are all simultaneously held, that when the actual decision making happens, the input at various levels are obtained, and therefore responsive decisions are taken. It might be overdue when I say that the inputs, particularly as an example, particularly on the insurance sector, which has been given since Prime Minister took over as the head of the government in Government of India. It took a couple of years, but the government squarely and roundly responded to all the requests made to open up the insurance sector where India has immense potential. That is one classic example where engagements, exchange of ideas, and also being at the level of the Prime Minister itself, these exchanges have transpired into policy initiatives. Now, that is the kind of engagement which we need to rapidly ramp up for the next couple of months, so that truly for the next 75 years, maximizing the potential that exists, we can lay the foundation. The foundation exists, we'll have to further strengthen it. And I think mutual understanding, particularly at a time when the world is so divided, and the world is so engaged in such activities which you think, who exactly would want these to happen? But when it is happening, none of us feel empowered enough to stop it. So we are at very severe, challenging times. And therefore, I would think such engagement at this level will only further strengthen common shared values between India and the US. And the shared values doesn't just stop with democracy, it also helps in freeing economies, which are otherwise very throttled by engagements which are not so desirable. So I would think shared values should now enlarge itself to values of common beliefs, such as your economy, the free economy, liberal values, liberal but respecting countries and their sovereignties, liberal as yet the individual country's civilizational values. And therefore, I think the word that Atul Keshav mentioned during his introductory remark, that if there is mutual respect, it takes us quite a distance in this engagement. The outstanding 3 or 4 issues, outstanding I say, not just because it's been pending, but which are eternal values and eternal relevance to our economies, is first of all, as I said, economy itself and the democratic values, the freedom, individual freedom that we hold very precious to ourselves. But the commonness also expands into concerns that we have. We are very concerned, we meaning not just India, but you as well, if I understand, are very concerned about how we are going to get over the uncertainties which are before us. The uncertainties, I start with something which is not really on a list of priorities, top on the list. But I start with the complexity which is there in handling climate-related issues. Every one of us, because we periodically attend these climate conferences, have committed ourselves to nationally determined commitments, whether in transitioning, whether engaging a lot more in renewables, and so on. But even as we are plotting our course, came huge big uncertainties in terms of the availability of the crude, availability of natural gas, and also the uncertainty because of the war. Now, it doesn't surprise, but indeed it should surprise each one of us that we have not even thought about such extreme exigencies, that many of us are now, without blinking an eyelid, saying that, sorry, we'll have to go back to coal at least for some time. And there is no other way. And I also admit that there's no other way. Many of us have openly said, we want to go back to coal because it's becoming expensive. That argument for India, for instance, holds a big weight because even we feel affordable energy for our huge population, where our developmental milestones are slightly differently placed within the country. There are some parts of the country which are fairly well developed. There are other parts which are not so developed, but for all of them, we are here to provide affordable energy. And at a time when we were looking at moving out of coal, and I remember in 2 of my budgets placing emphasis that we shall move out of thermal, we shall close some of the legacy thermal power producing whatever companies, and then get on to greater emphasis on a transitional energy, which is natural gas, and then equally ramp up our renewable investments and production. Now, this has received a big jolt, and therefore now we are also saying we need to fall back on coal for some more time, and it worries me about how these coal dependency again will have to be cut down, and we can get back to the platform of transitioning into less environmentally threatening source. So this jolt, which is not just for India, which is for everybody, but for India, it becomes even more onerous because of the size of our country and the different levels of development. So on climate, I think between India and US, with this concern, and also with the development, there is so much happening, threatening energy security of the world. It is for us to see how best we can come up with solutions, even in the transition period, till before the world comes back to the normalcy. But I find 3 strengths which are typical for India, which can now become the platforms based on which we can maximize on the prosperity in the next 75 years between India and the US. And the 3 strengths that I want to talk about are the size of Indian economy, about which you had the speaker before me, Mr. Brilliant, talk about. The size of the Indian economy today, 5th, sooner 3rd, and also the diversity of the Indian economy offers a great lot of opportunity for the next 75 years. Second, India's demographic strength, a demography which I like to upfront say is not the demography of 50 years ago, of 100 years ago, of 200 years ago. A demography which was only labor, manual labor, labor which were during the imperial labor era shifted mercilessly into plantations far away from home. They were also not the early 60s migrants who were labor who went seeking jobs elsewhere because they couldn't have the job here. Today it is not that labor which is the demographic strength. The demographic strength of India is twofold if I look at it. One, they are skilled, high-end, technically savvy people who are giving solutions to the world for digitizing their economies. They are the people who are giving solutions to the world on very many health-related issues. They are doctors, pharmacists, scientists. They are the people who are launching rockets. They are the people who today before you are coming up with solutions for a futuristic world. So it's not labor which is the demographic strength of India, it is the skilled manpower which is also very adept at moving from one level of technology to another without causing major disruptions to the existing framework wherever they are engaged in. Equally, the same demography is the one which has the purchasing power in its hand. It is largely middle class, but very aspirational. And that money is the one which is going to buy products made outside, products made within India, and that market is a captive market for any investor. We are not asking for investments to boost our economy and therefore, as a largesse. It is more an investment where you have an existing captive market, and beyond which you can also look at an export elsewhere. But that captive market gives you equally the supply of labor, which is absolutely skilled, not blue collar, but not even the white collar. As they said in Davos a couple of years ago, the new collar, which is technology savvy. That's a second. And the third is the prowess that India has acquired in the last few years in the digital world, that has influenced the way in which we have spread vaccination, certified vaccination, also give a platform for the global communities on how to track, trace pandemics, also how to track and trace patients. And we've also made sure that such a platform is not our property. We've opened it up for the entire world. I didn't have to say much more on the India stack, which is making a very big buzz around financial domains, the payment systems, and now I've heard several countries talking to us if the India stack can become a global stack, in that we have payment structures, financial technologies, which can talk to each other between countries. India and Singapore, India and UAE are at an advanced stage in talking about interoperable systems in the financial, which is going to ease out a lot of cross-border payments. Again, here I want to underline the point. These are not just cross-border. Of our diaspora, which is working elsewhere and wanting to send money as remittances, it is more cross-border payments on a high order, which can help bulk transfers of funds, investors, stock market operators, and also fund managers, all tend to get a benefit out of it. So that is, I suppose, the three strengths I like to highlight before you, especially when we are looking at creating common synergies between our two countries. The size of the Indian economy, I wouldn't want to elaborate again on it, but what I see as the global possibility is if India and US together were to work within the next 20 years, I guess we will reach a 30% of the global economy size, and we shall be contributing to the global GDP to the extent of about 30%. And that itself will make India and US the engine of global growth. And on that, where we are today as India, in spite of all the challenges, and we are confident that irrespective of the steps central banks around the world would take to protect their economy, to ensure that their economy is given enough monetary support. I still repeat this, which I did mention before entering this room to the board members. We are confident, and I also know there is a representative of the Reserve Bank in this crowd. We are confident that the steps that the US Fed may take, or the European Central Bank may take, Indian Central Bank, the Reserve Bank, is fairly clued into the developments which are happening all around, and they are confident of handling the Indian monetary policy without major blips or rise and falls. And if that is the side of the monetary, on the fiscal side, I think even during the pandemic, and immediately after that, when we were trying to revive the Indian economy, we've shown and showcased, and I'm not saying this as if it's a point of achievement, I'm more saying it as this is what is there before me. I will have to go on that path further to ensure that India moves fairly well guarded in this. The fiscal policy during 2020 and 2021 has been a very targeted fiscal policy, in that we knew because of the consultations. Again, the virtue of the policy making under Prime Minister Modi has been that it is driven by exhaustive consultations. And the process of consultations are very layered, beginning the Prime Minister down to officials in the ministries. So with this kind of a consultative process, during the pandemic and immediately after that, the revival of the Indian economy has largely been helped by the government, by right kind of policies, quick reforms, and above all, hand-holding for targeted sectors which need it. And there was therefore no splurging of money. There was no overprinting of currencies. There was no flushing the economy because money has to reach the hands of the people. And in this, the technology part of India's development in the last 8 years immensely helped us in that we knew we had to give money to somebody, we could reach that somebody by just the press of a button. So the technology element is one which has helped us in successfully executing the targeted approach during the pandemic. And that I understand was a challenge for many of the countries because they were less on the digital path. We could ramp up faster. So the final point is on the digitization itself, between the US and India, I see a lot more further scope. And this I'm saying on a day when the ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, is being given a big push in India. It will democratize the digitization. Common people, common small sellers can all now, without being excessively charged, get onto a platform and through that have several other platforms equally talk to each other. So I choose X payment portal, whereas I'm looking for a commodity which is available on a different payment portal or a marketing portal. This and that portal can talk to each other, having come on board ONDC. That is, I think, a massive revolution where many of the SMEs in India cannot afford digitization through the otherwise charging portals. This Government of India, owned in the sense Government of India and many of the Government of India institutions owned ONDC, is revolutionizing the Indian retail manufacturing and also retail consumers. So on a day when that is really being captured, I underline the point that India's digital prowess is going to be a very effective tool through which this India-US 75 years of sharing prosperity can be very well affected. Together with many other things, the US can contribute to this exchange. Beyond this, as my opening remarks, I do not want to take more time. I'm indeed grateful for India Ideas Summit. We need a lot more ideation for us to benefit, for both our countries to benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, ma'am, for those insightful remarks.